Hello, hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dope Black Talks Live. We are on location at the Blackout 2020 demonstration. I don't know if you can see that out there. We've been streaming two streams. We're going to take just 2 or 3 seconds to get set up, and I'm going to put a nice little graphic on here for you. Marcus, go ahead and say it to the people before I put something up.
Yeah. So this was quite the event today. I guess the best way to describe it is we were at an event called Aurora Blackout, and we had an opportunity to speak, and then all of a sudden it started to rain, and it was a torrential rain. It is not even funny. So we're back, and we just need to get ourselves in a position where we could broadcast, and the city of Aurora was generous to allow us to hang out here inside in the Fletcher room and kind of just, as you see, set up and get busy. So we still got an agenda today. We still got some things that we want to talk about and that we want to deal with, and just talk through some things. This event today at Aurora 2020 was amazing, actually, and it still is amazing. They had about 85 speakers. Speakers are still going right now, and I'm gonna see if we can get some footage as we go through this process.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and welcome our guests in. We have Sheriff Tyler Brown. This is a big deal. We're at Aurora Blackout 2020, and we're talking about, can you mute? We're talking about criminal justice reform. We're talking about holding our elected officials accountable. We're elected officials, but we're talking about justice for our Black citizens. And we are interviewing live from the protest with our sitting sheriff. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Sheriff Tyler Brown, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. Welcome.
We're here.
Thank
We're
you.
live.
Thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity, and I appreciate you guys inviting me to be part of this.
Yeah, well, running a little late. It was quite the event here where we had to run into the municipal building just to get away from the rain, and then they said that there was a tornado. So,
Oh, geez.
so we're set.
As long as you guys are safe.
That's the key. All right. So what's up?
Oh man, we want to talk about. I had a whole presentation ready, but we didn't. Everything kind of went out the window. We want to talk about SB 20-217. That's the bill being sponsored by Leslie Herod. It's also co-sponsored by Rhonda Fields. Basically, the entire Democratic delegation, and it's talking about integrity, transparency, body-worn cameras, all the things that we want to change in the criminal justice system. We want to talk about that, and it's not trying to give you meatballs, and we're not trying to play gotcha, but we do want to ask you real questions.
Absolutely.
So first of all, have you covered that? Have you looked at it?
Have I looked at the bill?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have. We've been going through it the last few days. My legal team, the other members of the sheriff's office, talking with senators. I've had the opportunity to talk with senators and representatives about the bill. I think that there's some great things that we already do with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office inside of that bill. Body-worn cameras. We have complex policies and procedures about body-worn cameras and when they're on, and interactions with members of the public, and making sure that we're recording that, and that people they feel safe and secure with those recordings. So that's a big one for us. I talked earlier, there was an early version of this bill that I talked about this morning on a call that Marcus and I were both on, that there was a portion of the bill that required summonses to be issued rather than arrests in low-level offenses. And I think that that's important. And I would like to see that come back. I would support that. I would support us moving away from incarcerating people for those lower-level offenses that could be arrestable. But why not give them the summons and then allow them to go through the judicial process, and kind of goes to that innocent until proven guilty mindset. So that's something I support. I support the accreditation process. That's something, and this is something that I'm going to talk about just with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office and not step out into other law enforcement agencies. But we pride ourselves on being accredited. We have an outside accrediting body, CALEA, who comes in and reviews our policies and procedures annually. So it's a process that takes place annually. And every 4 years, they do an on-site review to make sure that we are in compliance with those 437 standards that they have for law enforcement agencies to meet. I'm proud to announce that last year we had our on-site review, and those 437 policies and procedures were met without any issues or any recommendations for changes or updates. And so we received our accreditation with excellence during this accreditation process. So I support that. I support making sure that we're holding people accountable for their actions. One of the things that in this bill is use of force being monitored and reported. Well, every use of force that we have at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office is reported and reviewed by a first line supervisor and then sent to our Office of Professional Standards, where depending on the use of force, it's reviewed by a sergeant or a lieutenant. And it's reviewed for the appropriateness of that force. And so we're constantly training and making sure that we are using force appropriately and not abusing it. And I think that goes to the trust of the community. So those are things that we have. The banning of chokeholds in this. Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office already has a policy in our use of force policy that bans chokeholds. And it wasn't reactionary. This was a proactive step that we took years ago to eliminate that. And we monitor this all the time. We had a deputy in training that couldn't break that habit. He was a cadet. Everything that he did, he would go to put somebody into a chokehold or a headlock. And we trained him, told him don't do that. In training, he would continually do it, and it didn't stick, and he didn't become a deputy at the sheriff's office. He was removed from training, and the result was that we're putting people out on the street and in our detention facility that are properly trained. And so I support all the extra training, the de-escalation portions. I support the one thing that is an issue is the qualified immunity.
And I was going to ask you about that.
Yep.
Before we get there, because I think that's a great subject. Let me ask you, first of all, there's probably people out there who may not know what the bill is. So can I just go through a couple of points of the bill and then get your thoughts on that? But I definitely want to speak about the qualified immunity. I think that is a major issue and a pretty important discussion in and of itself. And I know we didn't get to spend a whole bunch of time earlier this morning when we went through it. But for those that don't know, Senate Bill 20-217 is it's otherwise known as the Enhanced Law Enforcement Integrity Act. And so some of the things of this act would be requires the use of body-worn cameras for all local enforcement agencies. It requires the release of body camera footage from incidents within 14 days, requires the Division of Criminal Justice in the Department of Public Safety to create an annual report about use of force, stops, unannounced entries, requires the Division of Criminal Justice to maintain a statewide database that's searchable, requires law enforcement agencies to fire officers who pled guilty to inappropriate uses of forces, and for their certification to be revoked. And then there's also that aspect of removes the qualified immunity and the good faith justifications for prosecution for civil action. So those are some of the things. And so I know you spoke a little bit about that, but when you think about qualified immunity, and I know I'm speaking as a defense attorney, and then I know you're speaking on the other side as a law enforcement officer. Talk to me about your concerns about qualified immunity.
Well, there's not a law enforcement officer out there that doesn't want to get bad actors off the street more than myself. I'm concerned that there is, and so let me back up a little bit. When we have instances where there's lawsuits brought against a deputy, we have those reviews internally at the county to determine if the actions were lawful, moral, and ethical. And if they were, then there is that indemnification for that deputy. And so we do that inside the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office and the Arapahoe County government system to make sure that we're adhering to the Constitution and that we're adhering to the laws of the state of Colorado. The concern I have is that the numerical value, the $100,000 or 5% of a claim, is paid by the law enforcement officer without the ability to have insurance. So I'm looking at it and I want to hold people accountable, and I want to make sure that they are doing the right thing and that they're doing things in accordance to our policies and procedures and the law. But looking at their families and looking at the things that they have attained to provide for their families, does that put that at risk? I can tell you that, looking at the numerical values of what we pay deputies, it's a middle class job. And I don't know a lot of middle class people who have $100,000 sitting in their bank account. And
Right.
There's some vagueness in what these lawsuits can consist of. So I'm okay with removing the qualified immunity if there is a good faith portion of this, or if we have the ability to insure those individual deputies. And I look at it, becoming a law enforcement officer is a trade. It's something, it's a skill that you have to go and learn. If there's a specific course for it, and that's the police officer's standardized training. And, I made that comparison this morning that let's have them be bonded and licensed, and make sure that if they do step out of line, that there is something there for the individual to recoup. Because something that I look at too is, say there is a bad actor and there is an issue where they've violated somebody's rights, they've gone through the system, and there is a judgment against that deputy. Well, and that judgment gets filed and they can't pay it and they file for bankruptcy. It's not a monetary thing that might help a little bit, but if there's nothing there to pay, that person is out twice now. And so if there's an insurance policy, or they're bonded or licensed, whatever that looks like through the Department of Regulatory Affairs, there would be some compensation there for those actions. So I'm just looking at the vagueness of that and making sure that there is some protection there for the families, and understanding that this is a tough job and that there's decisions that are made in split seconds, that there needs to be a little bit of good faith, that the officer's doing things in good faith. If it's malicious and with wanton disregard for life, then that's an issue. And those are the times that we need to step out and not indemnify somebody and hold them accountable and hold them criminally accountable. That's one thing that I want to make sure that people understand, is that our Office of Professional Standards goes after these bad actors. And if you commit a crime, just like on the street, say a deputy gets a DUI, should a DUI be a life sentence to, losing your job, losing your house? No, it's a mistake. And that's how it should be treated on the outside, whether if you're a law enforcement officer or not. Let's give people some human grace. And I guess that's my biggest concern with that, is that we have ways of holding people accountable. Let's do that, but let's not end their life
Yes,
or
sir.
what they've tried to attain. So,
and let me jump in, because as you know, classically in the Black community, we feel like we haven't been extended that same grace, and we haven't received those second chances. But we do, as a community, believe in redemption and that people have a pathway moving forward. So I want to ask you about, let's say you have a deputy and you find they have an issue. Our biggest issue in the Black community is they just go straight to the next police department or to the next municipality, and they get into another position to start taking more Black lives or abusing Black communities for 3-4 years before we find out what they did.
well, I think one of the interesting things that we have here in Colorado now, and I think it was legislation that was passed last year or the year before, is the mandatory opening of internal affairs reports, and that we're identifying certain situations where deputies are abusing their power, and we come back and we look at those other internal affairs reports from other agencies, and we find that yes, this is an abuse of power. Again, I think we look at those individually, and we look at, was it an abuse of power? Was it a flagrant disregard to policies and procedures, that was detrimental? But there are some bad actors out there in law enforcement that attack law enforcement officers as well. And so I think there's really good cops out there that have fallen victim to some bad command staffs. And so I'll be the first to say that, because I think it's out there, but I think that we're starting to move in the right direction. But I agree with you. If you're abusing people's rights, there should be something that is a disqualifier.
Yes, sir. Let me. There's one more person we want to bring in. We have another Black defense attorney. We have some pillars in this community, and I want to bring in a friend of the family, Michael Carter.
You were on with him this morning. You couldn't hear him, so we're bringing him back.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah. Good afternoon now, Senator Brown. I hope this goes better than the last conversation. But I think hopefully my camera and everything. Was that?
Yeah.
You're loud and clear.
Yeah, you're good.
Sheesh. I was out there with you guys for a minute. Yeah. And
did you cop the merch?
I did not get the merch. I looked up and was like, Dear, you need to bring
the family.
But what I wanted to talk to Sheriff Brown about was, and we didn't get to talk about it earlier, and I think he'd gone into the policies and the procedures of training these individuals. And when I say individuals, they're sheriffs, they're human beings like everybody else. And the policies and procedures going in the training, and Sheriff Brown gave us a very detailed account of how these individuals are trained and what they go through to be sheriffs in Arapahoe County. What I want, and what the the people want would be fine. You do what you need to do regarding your policies and procedures. You do what you need to do to feel comfortable putting this individual on the street. What I need is when this individual, when this sheriff, when this person exhibits those characteristics that then the public sees, that when he becomes that bad actor, where is the accountability? Because I cannot fault you if you put all these policies and procedures in place. You did what needed to be done. But the next step is, and this is what we're seeing, the next step is these individuals out on the street, they become bad actors. And instead of the same due diligence you have in place in training them and putting them out there, it turns into, we're going to wrap them around that thin blue line, and we're going to protect them. And then these people are over and over and over, even to the point where if you do, Sheriff Brown, say you're done with this individual, he pops up in my discovery because he's working in somebody else's jurisdiction. I mean, what after the fact? What's the accountability? That's what I want. I want to see is what's the accountability after they're out there on the street.
And I think that's a great statement, and I think that's something that you should demand of law enforcement agencies and law enforcement officers everywhere. I can tell you that our accountability, I don't know if you were able to hear at the beginning, but every use of force that we have at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office is reviewed by the first line supervisor. And then after that, it goes directly upstairs to our Department of Professional Standards. And depending on the level of use of force, it is reviewed by a sergeant or a lieutenant to make sure that the appropriateness of that force is met through our policies. And if it's not, then that triggers an internal affairs investigation. And if it's something that these individuals are not following these procedures, then they're putting their career at risk. And I think we've created a culture, and I think this gets down to the root of how we start to change this, is that we've created a culture at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office that deputies can step in, and they know they can. They know they can step in and intervene in a situation where somebody's abusing their power. And if that's the case, and if they're not, then they are just as liable for those actions as the next officer, as the officer that is committing those violations of our policy and those excessive uses of force, and really getting into that brutality that shouldn't exist in this job. That's not my intention as a law enforcement officer. That's never been it. I, as an officer and getting into this job, I really try to put myself in those people's position. I really try to see myself in that car, when you commit that traffic infraction or when you're going through those things. And there might be certain steps that I have to take to affect my job professionally, but looking back on it and saying, is that how I wanted to be treated in that situation? Is that how I would want my family members to be treated in that situation? And that's how I expect our deputies to act on a daily basis. But I really think it's a cultural thing inside law enforcement, is to have that culture set up that we understand that we have to step in. We have to be good stewards of the profession and create that environment of trust with the community so that we can go out and do our job. And so I think it's a cultural thing, and I think we've done a good job of creating that at the Sheriff's Office.
I'm sorry, I was talking into a muted microphone. But speaking of community, hey, a live broadcast. I want to take a second and do a comment check real quick, because they've been going wild in the comments. So Miss Deborah Warfield was asking why body cameras were turned off during Elijah McClain's takedown. Now, was that your jurisdiction? Were those deputies or were those Aurora PD?
That was the Aurora Police Department.
Okay, so let me ask you: if the Elijah McClain situation happened 100% exactly the same way as it happened before, how would you handle those officers if they were your deputies?
What, with turning the body cameras off?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's with the ongoing litigation, and our policies and procedures are not to turn those off. When you're in that interaction, you don't turn them off.
So Deborah also says that he was shot behind the ear with ketamine. Are we using ketamine in Arapahoe County, deputies?
Deputies are not. That is a medically prescribed treatment. I know that they've seen success with it with cases of excited delirium. I know that there's been some questions about the use of ketamine, but that comes from our medical rescue provider. So we use South Metro Fire. They're all throughout our district, and there's a couple other fire departments out east. So I'll have to defer and get back to you guys on that exact usage of that and what the total number is. But I know that there's partners from South Met Fire that would be willing to come on and talk about the use of that.
Yes, sir. A friend of the show, Howard Cho, he made a good comment saying we need independent counsel to prosecute law enforcement because it's apparent that most, if not all, local DAs work with local law enforcement to build their criminal cases. It's conflict of interest if you don't have independent or special prosecutors. I personally agree with that. A lot of people bring that up, and I'm also vying to be on the community police oversight task force, whatever we're going to call that once we get that done. But how are you going to work with entities such as that? Because I heard you mention the Office of Professional Development. Would you be willing to say, or at least say you pledge that you would like to work with entities like that? And whenever there's a possible conflict of interest, how interested are you in seeing an outside third party review?
I think third party reviews are great. I would, if there's a bad actor and people would feel better with an independent investigator, let's do that. The one thing I will mention about that is we participate in the critical incident response team in the 18th Judicial District. So we have a critical incident in Arapahoe County. It's not Arapahoe County deputies investigating Arapahoe County officers and their, whether it be justified or unjustified actions. It's officers from other agencies that have the training and experience to investigate these type of incidents. And it opens us up to, I think, a more objective view into some of these actions. And I can see that there's concern with law enforcement investigating law enforcement, but there's laws on the book that you have to follow. And there's a group of detectives and professionally trained investigators that, want to make sure that this is done correctly. They want to make sure these investigations are done correctly and that there's justice for both sides. So we already participate in that. We had a critical incident a little over a week ago, and the lead investigators are from the Parker Police Department, so not in Arapahoe County, still in the 18th Judicial District, but we bring in these other investigators. And I like the model that we use. If there's criminal actions and, if there's no hesitation, and I know that there's the ability to bring in special prosecutors from different jurisdictions. And I know that district attorneys across the state use that. So if there's something that they feel like there's a conflict of interest, they can bring in district attorneys' offices from other judicial districts to prosecute bad actors that have committed criminal offenses. So,
right. And in the comments, Deborah Warfield is on our warpath right now. And just I want to say in solidarity some of the stuff that she was saying. culture of slave tracking history needs to be revisited and acknowledged and considered re-reform of police. So I mean, we just want to speak that out and understand the history of what the police were doing whenever America started. I also want to mention who else was on here. Jordan Culver, that kind of concern to the public. It really feels like the laws and policies don't apply to officers in many situations, especially where the injured party is not white. Speak about how you feel like you're changing that dynamic. Is there teeth behind it? Is it kind of like you feel it? Like, when I say is there teeth behind it, because we sit on boards, right? So we know that it doesn't matter what we say or the culture we create if there's no policy and enforcement mechanism behind it. What kind of enforcement mechanism is there behind this culture you're creating? Because I don't necessarily look. I think that no news is good news. I haven't been hearing bad things about you, Sheriff Tyler. I'm not here to try to pin you to the wall, but we have to ask these questions. But what kind of policies with teeth are there to help continue this culture that you're creating?
Well, and that's a good question, and I understand that this isn't. I don't want this to be lip service, and I want these conversations to continue to happen. But our policies, with those 437 standards that CALEA mandates that we follow, our policies are thousands of pages long, and the teeth inside of those is termination. There's criminal charges. We look at that entire investigation when we look at the use of force and whether it was justified, and if it's not, and it's abusing that power, these people aren't going to be deputies at the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office. And I'm proud to say that we don't have a lot of those incidents.
And that's good. I ask this question on the school board often, when we talk about who's sitting at the table of the organization that is supposed to be doing this oversight and making these decisions. Stacy in the comment says, are these investigation groups made up, or do they contain minorities? If not, what type of makeup is that? Is it representative of the community? Because we're diverse out here. What's that investigation board look like?
For the use of force, for our professional
use
standards.
Use of force, your professional standards, yes, sir.
Yeah. So the makeup of our use of force team, it is white officers, but we have review. We have frontline supervisors that are women. I'm trying to look back. Just law enforcement has been filled with white males, and we talked about recruitment of district attorneys that are of color and reaching out, and we've actually expanded our recruitment nationwide, and that's something that we need to make sure that we focus on more, is that recruitment. So that's how the panel's made up right now, but that is a very specific job, and it's tested, and they have to meet very stringent standards to be a part of the professional standards team. So we actually call them inspectors. We have deputy inspectors and an inspector, and they adhere to all of those policies and procedures, and they make sure that all of our deputies do as well. So it's our internal affairs. So I call our professional standards is our internal affairs unit.
Okay. Anybody want to jump in?
Go ahead, Mike.
And I want to thank Sheriff Brown for pointing out the interaction between his organization and the district attorney's office. I'll point out that I believe Alexis King, one of my former classmates, who was running for district attorney in Jefferson County, is here. And bringing that up, diversity in the district attorney's office and your interaction with the district attorney's office, Sheriff Brown, what is your interaction with the current district attorney's office? I'll point out we've had for the last 16 years. I would have to say at least 16 years. That's how long I've been here. For the last 16 years, we've had one specific party has been in charge of the most diverse judicial district in the state. And what I heard this morning, it may be the most diverse judicial district in the country. You are constantly in the jails dealing with a diverse population, but you are dealing with a completely homogenized district attorney's office. Can you speak to, you've got one population you've got to deal with, but then you turn around and what's your interaction with this district attorney's office?
That's something that Jordan Culver also asked in the comment section. How can these teams expand to exclude people of color like tomorrow? So I appreciate you for answering and saying it's full of white men. I appreciate you being willing to just straight up say that. But what can we do about that?
It's promoting what we can do with that. It's making sure that we're hiring these people who represent our community, and that we are going to the places where we can hire people of color to be part of our organization, and making sure that they're getting the exact same professional development that everybody else is. And I think that we do that. We make sure that there's opportunities inside of our organization. We just need to get more people in the door doing these jobs. So our population needs to be better represented, but we also need to get more applicants in. They're out there. There's qualified people out there. We just need those applications. So,
Sheriff Brown, how are y'all?
Ahead.
Do y'all have a process for recruiting more diverse applicants? Do y'all go out to locations? What's the process? Because I know as a school board, we're trying to do the same thing, bring in more diverse teachers. But what's you all's process?
So for the longest time, when the economy's down, applications fly through the door. When the economy's good, people aren't wanting to stay up at 3 a.m. when it's 15 degrees below zero outside and dig cars out of blizzards, which I get. I understand that. But we actually started going nationwide. We've gone to California. We've gone to Chicago. We're starting to expand the reaches of the sheriff's office to pull people to Colorado, to pull people into our law enforcement agency. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I'm saying that we've got a good model here that can be shared across the nation. And I want to make sure that we're doing that. So we've started to go outside of our borders in Colorado. We go down to Fort Carson. We go down and try to recruit, individuals that are getting out of the military. And I would love to see the diversity of our agency expand. I really would. Let me go back to Michael's question real quick about my interaction with the district attorney's office. Since I've been elected, and trust me, I know the control of one party in the law enforcement arena, because there's still people. I've been in office for a year and a half now, and there's still people that I walk into rooms and it's shocked the world looking at a Democratic sheriff in Arapahoe County, because they never thought it was coming back, and we're here. So we got to put in the work. But my interaction with the district attorney's office has been good. I know that we've been asked to investigate other law enforcement officers in other jurisdictions to hold them accountable to the things that they're doing, and we work great. I have a great working relationship with Matt Malaro. Him and we have a lot of conversations about things we want to change and things that we can do to make a difference in the process of the criminal justice system. And that's
and call that out who that is for the people that aren't.
Matt Malaro is the chief deputy district attorney in the 18th Judicial District.
Second in charge. Yes, sir.
Yep, second in charge, and he's my right hand man when I need something from the DA's office, and I can always call George. I know that, but Matt and I are we've created a good working relationship, and it's been beneficial. I think we've started to try to make some changes. I know I talked to both of you guys, but I'll share it with this group too, is that we're trying new things. Out of necessity, we had to address, sorry, my house is going to blow over. The wind is here. We, under COVID, we had to address some serious issues, and jail population was one of them. And having a plan to address this is important, and it's important to have a good working relationship with the district attorney's office and the judicial officers. But we were able to cut our population by about 40, and we did that by mandating summonses are issued for Non-Victim Rights Act crimes. So low-level offenses, we're issuing summonses, and I ordered on March 24th a memo that went out to all of our law enforcement partners in Arapahoe County that they had to do the same thing. I wasn't picking up these low-level warrants. You bring me a low-level warrant, I'm not taking them. Advise these people that they have a warrant. And I shared with the group this morning, we have a staggering number of active warrants in Arapahoe County. 32,000 active warrants in Arapahoe County. And of those, approximately 20,000 of them are low-level offenses with bonds of less than $1,500. Are we really saying that we're going to jam somebody up and ruin their life for $1,500?
Exactly.
Mike, speak to that. I know that you have some thoughts on that too. Can't hear you. You're muted.
I don't want to go into what we went over earlier, but the conversation is basically, look, not to diminish Sheriff Brown saying low-level warrant, but a warrant in somebody's life, that could be the end of that person's livelihood. You on your way to court, maybe you forgot a court date, maybe you missed a court date, whatever, but you're on your way to work, you get stopped. You may lose a job. You're on your way to pick up your kids. You get stopped. All of a sudden now you're on your way to jail. You're being taken into custody, and something people learn very quickly is life does not stop because you've been taken into custody. Your kids still need to be picked up. Your bills still need to be paid. All these things still have to happen, but your life is now put on hold. And to be put on hold for the equivalent, and I actually had someone call me earlier yesterday, the equivalent, a $500 warrant. Imagine that, a $500 warrant. Being taken into custody, first of all, something that low level, bondsman's not going to take it. There's a line, we can go down that road of what bondsmen do and don't do, but I tell you one thing they won't do is take a bond so low that they can't make money. So now you've got a $500 warrant. You've been picked up. You don't have $500 on you. You can't get a hold of anybody, and the judge will be back on Monday.
Right.
Can I throw in a story?
Briefly, I've had that discussion with Marcus, and sitting in front of a judge, explaining to a judge, look, I obviously it cannot make this warrant for this individual. I can't make this bond, but there has to be some leeway. There has to be some give and take. If a PR bond does the trick, why do we need a cash bond?
Yes, sir. There's people right now that are trying to raise their kids, a friend of the family. And excuse me again if I've told this story too many times, because I only know my personal life. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not in law enforcement, not any of that. But people I know that have warrants, they're trying to raise their kids too. They're trying to go to work too. These people, they're not just trying to hide out. I know people that are trying to start a business and have warrants. People that have a kid that's trying to bump their head and do the same things that they did when they were younger, and they're trying to stop them from doing that. And those kids, because some kids are. But hey, when you make that call, trying to get your kid up and force them to go to school in the senior year, and they're like, well, if I call the cops, leave me alone, basically. So these warrants definitely need to be more like summons. We definitely need to be having a better process when it comes to this, because people with warrants, they're not just out and out criminals. You have warrants because of a lot of minor infractions. And $500 is easy to rack up with the city, with the state, with whatever municipal entity. I just want to throw that out there.
And let me speak to that too. And actually, Sheriff Brown, I got to give you props for implementing that type of policy internally, so that your deputies are not picking up these low-level minor offenses. It would be great. I'm assuming that the city, well, first of all, the city of Aurora will issue a lot of these low-level bonds of $1,500 that people can't make. You all don't pick up on those bonds, do you?
We have a policy prior to COVID that we don't pick up anything $500 or less. We advise them of the warrant. We tell them that they need to go take care of it. And, you know, that's at the risk. And Marcus, you being a judge, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but, you know, those warrants say shall, you know, and if you put your name on it and it says I shall, you know, they don't hold my deputy in contempt. That's a Sheriff Tyler Brown in contempt. And I don't want to go to jail, but I'm willing to take that risk because we could fill our facility up. And I don't want to fill our facility up with $500 warrants. I want the $500,000, you know, sex assault on a child. I want these predators off the street. I want the nefarious characters that are in our communities locked up. The ones that are truly out there causing harm. The $1,500, but right now, to answer your question, is the $1,500 warrants, anything that's non-victim related at this point, we're not taking in. We're telling people with $40,000, $50,000 burglary warrants for property crimes, you got a warrant, and we're sending you down the road right now. So we're not taking those in, but I know at some point we're going to have to start to, because judges are going to start to get annoyed with me ignoring their orders. But I think it's important that we create a process for those. And Michael, you're right. I say low-level warrants, and I'm looking at those bonds, but a warrant to anybody is panic, you know, because that what it looks like. I mean, it looks like jail, and if it's a Friday night, it looks like jail till Monday morning. And what are you going to do with the kids? And what are you going to do if you have to go to work? And what are you going to do if you have to go to work and make rent on Monday? And those last 2 days of work are going to be what makes the difference between making that rent payment or your mortgage payment. That's an issue. So let's work on a policy or procedure with judicial officers. And I'm pushing back right now, and we're seeing if we can get somewhere. But it's a slow process, just because it's been this way for so long. And I want the change to happen now. I want to be able to go to a summons system where law enforcement officers can, they come across these low-level warrants that are Non-Victim Rights Act crimes that have $1,500 or less to start. Scratch them another summons, get them a new court date. Let's work on that, and let's see if we can make a big difference. Because I can tell you, with less people coming to jail in our service area, crime has gone down. We've had less crime reported. So it's a small snapshot, but what's the worst thing that happens? And I tell my deputies this all the time. What's the worst thing that happens? We try it for a year and we can go back to the drawing board. You know, there's no reason to say, well, we can't do it because it's never been done like that. Or we've tried it before and that didn't work. Well, this might be the time that it does. And let's exercise it, and let's see if we can work together to make that happen. And that's a judicial reform and a law enforcement reform, I think, that can have a drastic impact and impact communities of color that, you know, we see that are incarcerated at a much higher rate in county facilities, you know, on these lower level offenses. Let's stop that.
Wow. Not much else to say. It takes one person in the position of authority to make that and say it out loud and say it proud. And that's legit. There is no reason for us to be filling up our jails with this. And Sheriff Brown, you understand it. Me and Mike, we represent most of the people we represent are indigent. So and when we say indigent, they don't have really $400 to be able to take care of an emergency. I know y'all have heard me say that before. So that's a big deal. And that's a big deal coming from the elected sheriff as well. I think it's an example. Quite honestly, Sheriff Brown, I'm calling out the chief of Aurora Police Department. Come on this show here. Come on the show and talk with us. And let's have these conversations that are legitimate in that respect. And so I appreciate that. Sheriff Brown, I know that you're busy. I know you probably got a couple phones. You got to be responding to things. And so we're gonna let you go at this stage. I just thank you for coming on the show. As far as I'm concerned, this is an open invitation. Please feel free to come back and talk with us, about anything and everything in that respect. I think it's important that we have these conversations in that aspect. But with that, Sheriff, we're gonna let you go. So we can kind of wrap up ourselves and I know the city of Aurora is probably trying to kick us out, but anyway, but thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Sheriff.
No, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that I want to come back. I want to be part of these conversations. The hard questions, they need to come. And I can tell you that I've had some learning moments in this time of running for political office and seeing things in a different light. And I'm here. And I felt compelled, and I made this statement earlier, and I'll do it right here, and then I'll let you guys finish up. But I think as an elected official, and you feel compelled to get out and make statements and try to get in front of things, but this is not my message that needs to be heard. I need to have open ears and an open table, and so I'm putting it out there to people that are watching. I'm putting it out there to this group. My table's open. My ears are open. The change of the world happens with one pebble making a ripple on the top of the pond. So let's do that, and let's be the example that we can share nationwide and be that shining star and show our diverse community has the ability. And if it can be done here, it can be done anywhere.
And also let the record show that Sheriff Tyler Brown reached into the show. Sheriff Brown texted me as soon as we finished our emergency episode for George Floyd and was like, "Hey, can we talk?" So that's why he's here. That's why we're showing him so much respect. I'm not here to kiss the butt of the police. We are live on location at a we are on location at a Black Lives Matter / Blackout 2020 / Elijah McClain / George Floyd protests, and we're inside because of the rain and whatnot. But he did reach into the show, so hats off, and thank you for the hard work that you do, and thank you for understanding that there's improvements that need to be made, and just calling it out and being willing to work with us in the process.
Let's keep up the good work. Thank you, gentlemen. You guys have a good night. Be safe.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And so,
Since you guys
with that.
since you guys are about to get out of here, let me just.
No, we're still on.
You're
We ain't
good.
done yet.
We started late.
Although I don't see anybody. We're still live. I don't see anybody though. It's just see
Well,
Kevin.
the only thing I wanted to say was, you had,
My bad. Hold up.
did you cut us off?
How did this happen?
There we go.
I will not be silent. I will not be silent.
Will not be silenced. No, we're not done yet.
We shall overcome.
What I
still
was
got a
going to say
little
was,
time.
we have the sheriff, we've got, criminal defense attorney. Think what you will about the sheriff, think what you will about a criminal defense attorney. We got a judge. We're missing a key piece of the puzzle. I can sit in front of these judges and just scream. Now your level of tolerance may be a $500 bond. If I need to make $500 bond, I can pull $500 out my pocket. Somebody else's level of tolerance may be a $1,000 bond. Somebody else's level of tolerance may be $5,000. Think about that. It is incumbent on the district attorney, that's who you're missing in this equation. It's incumbent on that district attorney to be able to communicate and listen. I can sit here and tell you I've had conversations where I can tell you exactly what the district attorney is going to say about a case by just looking at the charge. They have not looked at anything other than the charge. I can tell you what they're going to ask for. I can tell you verbatim what's going to come out of their mouth.
Including, I've seen no wrongdoing.
And so what we need and what needs to happen is there needs to be some, instead of me trying to explain a situation to a district attorney, and try to, this is a person of color, instead of me having to go down that road, let there already be that in place, that knowledge, that experience. Instead of me as a Black man trying to explain to this person what it's like for my client, imagine if they had some type of experience. Imagine if they came from the community, but instead I'm standing in front of a judge who may or may not be listening, and I'm standing next to a district attorney who I already know stopped listening a long time ago. So I think that's what you need next. If Dope Black Thoughts is, my request would be to have a district attorney, and there's some good ones out there, but I would request to have a district attorney come on here and explain that situation.
I'm on it. I'm down with it.
Let's put this call out now. Let me find where my camera is. Let me look in the
Where's
camera.
my camera?
There it is. To the police department chiefs, come on. To the district attorneys that are elected in the 18th, which is only one at this stage, come on, have a conversation with us. Let's be real. Let's talk logistics. Let's talk facts. Let's talk what's happened, what hasn't happened. Let's have a dope conversation and let's see where it goes from there. So Mr. Carter, I accept that challenge. What about you, Kev? You accept that challenge?
I'm all in.
All day, every day. Mike, I gotta say thank you for popping on the show with us. We had a rough morning, but we got through it. You looking professional. I appreciate that. I'm wearing t-shirts.
I'm so mad. But this is you guys. Woo. Hey, think about this. Yes, all right. Think about this. While they're trying to sell their merchandise, let me throw it out there to the people of Aurora. Imagine you have, look at what you have right now that is sitting here. They are hunkered down in the courthouse. They're hunkered down in the courthouse. Man, think about this. There was a Black Lives Matters meeting on the steps of the Aurora Municipal Building. All right, people?
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Look, man, it's coming.
Yeah, we about to go see.
Leave forward, get the bleep out the way. I'm gonna let you guys.
No, you ain't gotta get off, man. We about to go in the city.
No, that rain ran me off. I was there. I'm like, look, I'll be a hero, but not a martyr.
All right, so since we're selling our
Still going on.
Look at that. Got the logo on the back. I don't know if you can see that.
Listen, here we go.
But yeah. Oh, they're still out there.
Woo! All right, they better than me.
Well, it blew in real fast, but it blew out.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna get back
it's
at
still
it.
going on.
We're gonna step back outside and continue this movement, this protest and everything. But the key is it's peaceful, it's constructive. We have leaders in the community. There's elected officials sitting on the steps, or they were sitting on the steps before the rain came in. But we have elected officials, we have community leaders just out there, and most of all, we have the people. A lot.
Guess what? We are policing ourselves. APD is not here to police. We're policing ourselves. We're taking care of ourselves. We're keeping it peaceful. And as you see, it's still packed. It goes all the way around. So we're still doing it.
We're right here. So okay, comment check real quick. Deborah Warfield said, "Bam!" That's what I'm talking about. So yes, these shirts are for sale. We do not have our website set up yet with the capacity for that. But please hit us up on Facebook. Tell us your size. We do have women's sizes available as well. Tell us your size. So they're going for $15 for the t-shirt and $30 for the sweatshirt. We have hoodies. Get your DBT hoodie. You know, it's getting real out here. It's getting real. We work.
Also, as you know, this is we starting a black owned, black run network. You got to open the door for me. And so we are looking for talent. We looking for writers. We looking for folks to come out and give news updates. We looking for creative shows to put on. This is a network for us, by us, about us, and everything else that's going around with it as well. So that's where we're at. So we want to talk about that. So if y'all know somebody who's willing to pop on this, let's do it.
Hey,
But
I see you out there coming in from Houston, Texas.
So with
that, we hit an hour. We're gonna wrap it up. I just want to say once again, thank you, Mr. Carter. I'll hear from you in the morning. And to everyone out there that's watched and been a part of this and made your statements and comments, we appreciate that as well. It is important that we hear from you, and it's important that we have these conversations with our elected officials, that you are able to hear from them directly.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Michael Carter. He's out. He apparently he was messaging me the whole time. Hey, I'm about to get off. I was too busy selling my shirts. You understand me? But Marcus, this has been an impactful day, man. This has been a big one. This, to me, this is a movement that's bigger. I do believe someone was saying that this is the biggest protest that's ever basically happened. You blacked out on me.
I did because my computer just froze up.
Oh, your computer froze up? Well, we can wrap it up on that. Hey, if technology doesn't want to work with us, oh, there you go. I was going to say, we can wrap it up on that. Thank you, everybody in Aurora. Thank you, everybody in the Black community. Thank you, all the supporters and allies. Peace, love, and stay Black.